We've seen already, Martin, that we've become, very many of us, much more cautious and canny in the way that we use our energy. The use of energy has gone down. For obvious reasons, it's very expensive stuff. Are we also now becoming more smart and savvy in the way that we use our money?
Well, I think that's been a gradual progression for the last, well, probably even couple of decades, really. We have had this huge democratization of people's finances over the last 20 years with the outlet of the internet and the proliferation of products and choice that is out there, and those who can navigate their way through it tend to have become a lot more savvy. I mean, in terms of with our money, often the problem is when we're talking about interest rate issues today, certainly on mortgages, there's very little choice out there. You have one mortgage, you want to go and get it at the best rate. Most people are locked into a fix, so they won't actually feel those interest rates going up. Those who are on variable rates are either on cheap trackers and they will feel them jumping up, or they're stuck on a standard variable rate, or even worse, mortgage prisoners, so they don't have choice. So I'm not quite sure how much savviness has an impact on the mortgage side. It certainly does on the savings side. Savings rates are getting better, but they're only getting better for active, aggressive savers. And we need more active, aggressive savers. Of course, I don't mean people going to punch bankers on the nose. I mean, actually people who are sitting there saying, I am going to get myself the best rate and doing the work and constantly focused on it.
So when you go through your store box of good advice, of good tips on how to make your money go further, what is your best sort of advice now, Martin, at a time that it's never been more, or at least not for a very long time, hasn't been more needed? What's the word you really want to get out there?
Do you know, I find that is the most difficult question I'm ever asked. And if we were doing a newspaper article, I'd say move on to the next question, but we're not. We're on the radio, so I have to answer it. The reason it's most difficult is people's finances are not some great, homogenous pot where it is the same for everyone. Everybody's finances are different. So there is no one tip. It depends what you spend money on. I mean, the start point is go through, if you are worried about what is happening, even if you have to take a day off work to deal with your finances, in most people's cases, it will be the most lucrative day of work in the year. If you can save yourself £1,000 in a day by going through every single thing you spend money on, and first of all, asking yourself, can I get the same and pay less for it, which many people can.
Yeah.
And then if you've done that, go through the next one and say, if I can't afford it, can I get rid of it? Can I cut it? Can I do it cheaper? Can I do less? Then many people will save over £1,000 a year, and most people don't earn £1,000 a day.
Yeah, it is startling, Martin, isn't it? How much money there is to be saved by relatively easy processes and decisions, and that goes unsaved just for people not focusing on the need or the opportunity.
Yeah, it's really interesting because most people know that they can cut their credit card costs, but I always tend to think in most walks of life, with the possible exception of energy these days, where we are all paying the same because we have a regulated pricing market, there is always a way to pay less and get just as good. There are 9 million people currently out of contract on their broadband and mobile phones, and the huge majority of those people are vastly overpaying. I mean, just as a very simple example, there are 4 million people in the UK eligible for social tariffs on broadband. Social tariffs are special tariffs that most major providers offer for those who are on benefits, some only for universal credit, some for legacy benefits as well, many for those on pension credit. Those tariffs are around a third of the cost of standard broadband packages with the same speeds. So that's around £300 a year saved. And only 3% of those eligible for social tariffs are on social tariffs. So anybody listening to this right now who's in receipt of universal credit or another benefit, go and look what social tariff your provider offers. And if you're not eligible for that, well, then there's a page on my website where we list all social tariffs. And with the exception of Sky and Now, all the other providers will allow customers of other firms to come and join them on their social tariffs too. I mean, that's just a very small example of how a little bit of work can save people a lot of money depending on their circumstances.
Yeah, it's like picking up money on the ground, isn't it? And then there are ingrained habits that work to people's disadvantages. I mean, I suppose, well, you tell me there are incentives on offer to change your bank account, but people tend to change bank accounts as often as they change their home, or less.
I have a little bit more sympathy in bank accounts because the funny thing is when we do our customer service polling, bank accounts tend to get the best feedback of any sector. So you have some bank accounts like First Direct out there, which gets 90% of its customers think it's great. So therefore, you can understand why they're sticky. The government always had this issue about, how often people churn bank accounts being a measure of the success in the market. And actually, I thought that was slightly unfair because there are some banks that people like. Where I have the problem is those people who complain about their bank account and then stay with them. And you're right. Currently, you can get up to £200 for switching your bank account. There are 5 providers willing to do that. You've got Nationwide, you've got First Direct, who's the top for customer service. And if we go to the other end of the market, regular bank account switchers, I used to call them bank account tarts, but that word is not favorable anymore, so I shouldn't have just said it. But anyway, people who switch and switch and switch again, and as long as you don't need your credit score for anything like a mortgage or a credit card, you can do that. There are people who have made £1,000 or £2,000 from regularly switching bank accounts to go and get those sign-up incentives. And right across the financial market, you have things like that you can do. But to do that, you have to be active. And, I would say that everybody should be once a year sitting down and going through everything they've got and saying, can I do it better? I did my TV show on Tuesday night on savings. And savings is the simplest product to ditch and switch. If you've got an easy access savings account, and the number of people, I was so pleased to get messages afterwards from people who watched the show and said, I sat here while watching. It took me 27 seconds. That was my favorite one. It took me 27 seconds, and I've upped my interest rate from 0.4% to 5.25%.
Yes.
Well, think about that. That's an over 10-fold increase in interest. It won't have been on much money because to get at that rate, there must have been a Lloyd's customer going to its Lloyd's regular savings account. So it's only a few £100 a month they're putting away, but it doesn't matter. So we have lots of things. The one thing we can't control right now is the external situation. There is nothing we can do about that. What we can do is look internally at our own finances. The one caveat I put to all this is those people on the lowest incomes, those people who've already tried everything, those people who are struggling, there isn't much that I can help them with. There isn't much that they can do. And when I talk to the debt counselling agencies and those who are helping the most vulnerable, one of the real problems we have in society at the moment is those who, even after every single trick in the book has been done, they're still deficit budgeting, which means they still have less income than their minimum necessary expenditure.
Yeah.
Clearly, we've got a problem with the minimum wage. I mean, I'm a great supporter of the living wage from the Living Wage Foundation. Clearly, we've got a problem that benefits are going to need to be uprated with inflation, or we have real-term cost of living hit to the poorest and the most vulnerable. We have to look at the situation with pensions as well. So it's really interesting. Again, just when I did the program on savings, as I always do, and as it has done for the last 20 years, I do a program on savings, and I'll get someone complaining, saying, and I got one person who's tweeted me and said, I'll never watch you again, shows that you're just a typical middle-class program. And I thought, well, you obviously missed the program on benefits, and you missed the program on debts, and you missed the program on energy poverty. You judged it from one program. But even so, and people make the comment, who has savings these days? There are actually more savings accounts in the UK than debt accounts. Savings, I often get the biggest ratings when I do a show on savings. Many people from all walks of life, from all levels of income, have squirreled hard to put away savings and rely on them. And even those on universal credit these days can access the Help to Save account from the government, which is an incredible savings account. Again, if anyone's listening on this one, I'll just describe it briefly. You can put in up to £50 a month for 2 years, and you get a 50% bonus at the end of the highest amount you've had in. So let's imagine you put in £50 a month for a year, you've got £600. You have a financial emergency, so you need to take the money out, and you then can't contribute anymore. At the end of the 2 years, even though you've got nothing in the account, as the highest amount you had in the account was £600, you get a 50% bonus on that, you get a £300 bonus. And those on universal credit and tax and legacy benefits can usually get Help to Save. And even if you come off universal credit, you can still keep it until the end of that 2-year term. So it is an absolute no-brainer product. But again, not enough people know about it.
The advice of the kind you're giving us right now, Martin, it is at a premium. You just look ahead to the coming budget, and it's quite literally frightening, isn't it? We're looking at income tax is going up in some form or another, more than likely. Other taxes going up more than likely. A squeeze certainly on public sector pay. The need that we're seeing now is going to be multiplied, and the need for a bit of savviness, where that's available, where it can make a difference, it's going to be doubly important.
Well, it is. I think we have probably enough provisions in place to get people through the winter, apart from those who were already vulnerable. And we need to make sure that they are helped. If I'm really honest, my great fear comes next spring. Next spring, we see the end of the energy price guarantee. And we're currently looking at another over a 50% rise in energy bills coming in April, on top of where we already are, which is double where we were last year. We also, next spring, I think we'll probably be near the pinnacle at interest rates. And with so many people coming off their fixed interest rates, they will be, typically being expected to pay around £200 a month more per £100,000 of mortgage. And that will knock onto renters as well. And we've got the increase in food prices. So I think the winter will be tough, but there are provisions in place, the £400 energy payment, the money to those on benefits, those with disabilities, and pensioners. But what I really want the government to do is put provisions in place and make sure we're in a good place next April, and that's what has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the measures you're mentioning there, or the anticipated measures, take us into territory where it's not just about the very worst off in society. Middle earners are going to start feeling the squeeze more painfully than they have so far.
Well, I think certainly if we go back to the energy price cap as it is currently predicted to be, and you're talking a typical energy bill being £4,500, well, at the same time as mortgage rates going up by £2,400 a year per £100,000 of outstanding mortgage. Well, it's certainly not an exaggeration to say even some of those who tip into the higher tax bracket, if you're a 40% taxpayer earning £55,000 a year and your partner isn't working and you've got a couple of kids and you're living, especially in the southeast of England, but in other parts of the country too, well, you're going to be struggling too.